Welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, the journey to becoming a conscious man. Hey all, Stephen here, and welcome to episode 55 of the Unearthed Man Podcast. As a result of my current consulting client, I was actually required to fly to Sydney for a few days. Now, on my return, I had a window seat, and whilst listening to a podcast that featured my beautiful wife, Jackie, I found myself looking down through the minimal clouds at the changing landscape as it spread out underneath. What immediately came to mind was a sense of wonder as to what the land must have looked like pre-colonisation. What I could see, there were now pine forests for logging, cleared farmland for sheep and cattle farming, with man-made dams, and a number of quarries used for sourcing rocks, sand, and whatever other materials that, they've come out of those. So it also had me thinking that this view from the sky never actually existed pre-colonisation. So therefore, the understanding of the landscapes, the mountains, the rivers, the natural lakes, and the water catchments had to be experienced directly, actually from the land. This also included the active management of the land to ensure the plant, animal, bird, and insect life all remained in harmony with the traditional custodians of this land. So it saddened me to think of what has become of this beautiful country and the loss of the knowledge of the traditional landowners in how to manage it effectively and efficiently. This is why I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations peoples and pay respects to the elders past, present, and future, as they hold the keys to the ongoing survival of this great southern land. Now, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome aboard. If you're one of my regular listeners, then certainly welcome back. I really appreciate your ongoing support. I hope you had a chance to listen to last week's episode with Nico. It was really good to chat with him again and gain some great insights into his journey. Now, a few things to run through before we kick off with today's guest. Firstly, we now have an active Unearthed Men community made of men who are willing to support and be supported by other men. This is growing week by week, and I'm really excited with what's happening in that space because we're getting more and more men wanting to sign up and feel part of a men's community. So if you're a man or know of a man who is seeking his tribe or his community, then please use the link in the show notes below to sign up. Alternatively, you can send me a message via any of the social media channels. Secondly, it'd be great if you can subscribe to the podcast via your preferred app and also leave a review. The quickest way to enable the podcast to become more accessible around the world is for it to receive a 5-star review and actually move its way up the charts. By doing this, you're also acknowledging and thanking my guests for their time, effort, and wisdom. And finally, I'm taking expressions of interest for my 8-week men's program. The empowerment program. So if you have that deep inner feeling that there must be more to life than this, or you're constantly feeling irritated, frustrated, and have lost track of who you are, then this may be the program for you. If anything, we can at least jump on a call and see what I can do to help. So as a reminder, though, I'm only taking 10 men into each 8-week program this year. Therefore, if you are interested, then click the link below to join the waitlist, as it is definitely filling fast. Okay, on to today's episode. I had the pleasure of meeting this man at a gathering he and his colleague were facilitating on beautiful Jaja Warrung country in central Victoria. I found him to be warm, generous, and engaging. He describes himself as a husband, father, songman, musician, mentor, and founder of Living Learning Australia. He loves his wife and children and is passionate about his music, practising Qigong, the natural environment, his community, his cricket club, and sitting around the fire in the bush with other good men, helping them share, shift, transform, and find their true connection. This last one I can certainly testify to, having sat around the fire with him now on numerous occasions. We've also spent some time out in the water surfing together, which is on our list to do again soon, I'm sure. So welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, Andrew McSweeney. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
I'm very well, Stephen, and really good to see you and good to be with you this morning.
Yeah, no, it's a real honour to have you come on to the podcast. Having met you at the Gathering Men, we didn't mention that in here, but yourself and your colleague Brett run this beautiful men's group called Gathering Men, and having that chance to have met you face to face at the first gathering I went to, which was probably now November 2021, I think it was the one I actually came along to, and it was such an amazing experience. And what I liked about that is how open and honest you were about where you're at with your life and the journey that you had been on. And I felt that just in you being willing to share your journey actually made it so much more comfortable for the men that came along. So as we know, part of this podcast is to talk through these journeys. And so I'll hand it over to you, Andrew, as to your journey and how you came to where you are today.
Sure. Okay, where do I start? Well, I guess if it's around, I mean, a big part of my life is music, and I've played music from a very young age, as long as I can remember. I played music from when I was 9 years old. Learned to play piano till I was about 13, and then I didn't enjoy it. I stopped playing, and then my older brother Paul asked me to play keyboards in his band, so I did that, and that was like a whole other world of discovery. Suddenly I was playing music that I was connected to, and with people a bit older than me, which was really exciting, and playing music that I knew and knew the sounds of, and then creating those sounds of the songs that I knew and songs that I loved. Whereas when I was playing the classical, I didn't have any appreciation for the music. I remember being in a grade 3 exam, and this piano teacher, the instructor, and I always just played enough to get by, and the instructor said to me, she said, she asked me about the composer. It was Bach, and I knew nothing about Bach, and she berated me for not knowing anything. And I was just sitting there thinking, I'm done here. This is not fun. And now it's got even worse. Now I'm getting a hard time for it. Whereas, once I was learning my sex songs or whoever it was we were learning back in the 80s, or the Monkees or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, and creating my own parts, something came alive in me, and then it was just about getting through school. Even through school, in high school, my main objective was to find a bass player and a drummer.
Right.
That's all I was trying to do, so I could play my own songs, and which I did, and I've never stopped. But I've at the same time I've had varying levels of success with music, and then also becoming a father, realized that, okay, I remember there was one week I had 3 gigs. We had a couple of kids, and I had 3 gigs, and then the next week I had no gigs. All the gigs disappeared. I'm like, okay, this is not really going to work, bringing up children. And of course, Stephen, you know what it's like. Once I became a father, everything changes. Nothing. What I thought was important isn't important anymore. It's just, my priorities completely shifted. So my priority was to care for my children. So once things weren't, once I wasn't working, then I'm like, okay. So, but I had some great mentors in the late 80s, and one in particular, her name was Sue Gillard, and she was playing in a band called the Running Bears through the 80s, and we were a local. We were, famous in our own lunchbox, whatever that saying is. We played around Melbourne. We played 6 nights a week, and we played to full houses 6 nights a week, and literally twice on Sunday.
Wow!
It was a 60s cover band, and it was just this serendipitous band that just took off, and was a whole. I was like 17, 18 years old. For me, all my friends were going overseas and traveling, and I was like, oh my God, I'm having so much fun here. I'm not going anywhere, But it was a lot of fun, and it was actually too much fun. It burnt me out. By the time I was 20, 21, I was really burnt out from that.
Okay.
And luckily I met a woman, this woman, Sue Gillard, and the Running Bears band was employed to tour schools, and we'd go to a school and we would work with teachers, and by then I was probably 19 and or 20 or something like that, and she would always, I became her go-to. So she taught me very, very quickly, in a very short time, how to educate, how to teach. She taught me to go into a room and just tell people what I know. And the way she just, and then she would support me. She'd say, oh, that was really good. And now go and do it about this. Tell them about how you write a song. Tell them about how you sing that song. Tell them about how you play bass. Tell them about how you play guitar. Tell them about how you manage your own band, whatever it was. Yeah. So it was just fast track to be an educator and be a communicator. And it was really, the lesson was just talk about what I know, tell them what I know, and share what I'm doing. And I then realised when I started to lose those gigs being a father, it was like, okay, I've got to think laterally here. And this whole workshop thing worked well for me. So then I started the parallel, really to support my own addiction of playing my own music, was I created the business, which was originally called Living Music. Then it became Living Learning Australia, because we included Jackie's work around environment and both of our work around well-being.
Okay.
And I've changed the name of the school, similarly to that transition from playing classical to playing in a rock band. I realised that I needed to change the name from the School of Living Music to the School of Loving Music, because that's what it's all about for me.
Beautiful.
And then, I'm not sure where to go from there, but I think, and then at the same time, I've always been inquisitive, and I've always been, my mum used to say that I used to always had a sense of what was going on around me.
Yeah.
So I started to look at, do things like, I remember my wife did, back when one of my daughters was born, Jackie was doing yoga. And I just looked at her and thought, wow, you seem different because you're doing yoga. This was in the mid to late 90s. So I went and started doing yoga. And then just because I could see how it helped her, how it changed her energetically without realizing what it was, but I knew something was going on. And then that started me on a path of then self-reflection. And then about 20 years ago, I went to a thing called a Shaman's Doorway, a men's retreat. And that really blew my mind, down in Tasmania at my sister's property. And they introduced me to that whole concept of self-awareness and what was going on for me. And it was my rite of passage, because then I was in my early 30s, but I was not, there were things that needed to change. And through that process did change. Yeah.
So and I pause it. Just probably there's a couple of things just to maybe double back on there. So you spoke about the music and the family, and as you said, there's a thing that happens where yes, priorities change. So those important things of, fraternizing and drinking and partying and everything else, which seems the most important thing in the world, and have these great social communities, and then your family comes along and you realize how precious our kids are. One of the things I often see, though, is there's that where people then they flip all the way from what was their passion to now I have to do everything for my family, and start to give up their passions and start to find that they get lost, because the thing that brought them joy, and family brings you joy, but there's also that thing that we still need as men, as an inner driver. So is there anything that happened with you in that space? Because you said now I don't have gigs and everything else, about how you did you lose that passion for a bit and then you got a bit lost, or how did that work for you through that time?
It's such a good question, because I meet a lot of musicians who say to me, yeah, I used to play, but then I became a father, or I became a mother, or whatever, and I became a parent. And I've never understood that personally. And I had the same conversation with a mate many years ago, and he said, yeah, but you lived and breathed it. And I did. I know I did. I mean, I'm a songwriter. I hear songs all the time. I write songs all the time, and I love singing them. I've got a gig today with a mate around the corner at a brewery, and I had a sing last night at a kirtan. I just love it. I just love it so much. So that was never going to change. But I remember the moment I realised, not the exact moment, but around the time I realised I was becoming a father. Which was so amazing, such an amazing thing, and it was unexpected too. So we were just so excited. It was like, wow, here we go. But I remember being aware of and having that conversation with Jackie around, okay, but I guess I was expressing my fear, and that was, okay, but I don't want to end up in a warehouse working full time doing a job that I don't like, or anywhere working full time in a job that I don't like. And I was actually speaking to myself, I guess, really, as a young man in my sort of mid to late 20s. I was 26 when I became a father, and so I had that presence of mind to say, okay, I want to retain myself. And then at the same time, my brother bought me a book. It escapes me now. The Alchemist.
Nice.
Very popular, very well-known book. And that book really cemented that concept of maintaining my passions through maintaining myself through fatherhood and through providing for my family and being in relationship with my wife, and also being at my work, having that balance. And that's been something that I've really I was going to say fought for, but I haven't fought for it. It's happened, pretty easily, and I've been very fortunate, and I'm really grateful for the work that I do with my business, and it was in all of that. It's like when I made that decision, it's like I've been working with this guy Darren Eden recently, and I've learnt that often people talk about trusting in the universe. The universe will give me signs. I'll trust in the universe. Well, I don't subscribe to that anymore. And not that I really did. There was something about that didn't ring true with me, with trusting in the universe. And what I've learned since is that if I've got a clear vision of what I want, what it is that I want to do, then I'm not waiting for the universe to tell me. The universe is actually coming through me instead. And I can then choose which direction I take. And then the universe will provide what I need. Things it'll collaborate. It'll work towards supporting my vision, and so that's what was happening there. I was really clear about, okay, this is what I want to do. So then I started to realize that I could do so much more with my music. I realized a lot of things once I started that personal journey. I realized that the reason I was playing music, for me, it was about getting famous. It was about being famous to then get my parents' attention, so then they would love me more. So they know they loved me, right? That old thing. So, which is common, for people to do. Anyway, it was common for me, and so once I realised that I was doing that, I'm like, okay, right. Then a lot of things changed. One was I came back to playing what I loved. I'd lost track. I came through playing music in the 80s and 90s, like on the music scene, where the whole idea was to get to a record company, and then a record company will make you famous.
Mm-hmm.
So once I made that realization of what my intention was, that I was putting the cart before the horse, it came back to me really focusing on the music that I love. And then once I did that, then I realized that I can do so much more with my music. So then I started to move into that area of community music and working with all sorts of people in all sorts of ways using music as a healer and as a connector,
Yeah, to just go back on the point you touched on with parents and where that is, that the desire or need to be seen or to be heard, and what's that path that we actually take, in some cases it's perfectionism, in some cases, it's fame. And in other cases, it's actually to be seen, to be heard, is actually to become the rebel, to actually, go down the other path, on the basis that sometimes any attention is good attention, whether it be bad or good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, having our parents talk about us in a bad light, at least they're talking about us.
Yeah.
So as you went through that path of realization, like, how did that relationship work out with your parents? Like, was there a point where you just said, hey, I don't need to do this anymore, or you had a conversation with your parents, or like, how did you work through that dynamic? Because one of the themes that's sitting with me at the moment is this concept of, anchors or chains. And it's this whole thing that all this stuff in the past, we've got like a chain connected to it. And they may be small chains, but if you have enough small chains, you just get blocked and you can't move forward. And so sometimes these things about, I'm still holding on and I'm still trying to be seen and trying to be recognized by my parents, which is just another chain that's actually potentially holding us back. So where are you at with that, just out of interest?
Yeah. No, it was never a conversation I had with them. It was just an energetic shift in myself. It was understanding why I was setting the coordinates I was, why I was visioning for the things that I was, which was fame, which was being famous, which was being known. And then once I realized, oh God, and it was such a relief to me. I was like, oh God, because the path I was on was very hard, was very frustrating. It was a struggle and there was no flow, so it wasn't happening for whatever reason. I was probably delusional about who I thought I was and why I thought I could be that person, So it was more of just a stopping in my tracks going, oh God, what am I doing heading down that path? And then it was like, okay, well, which path would I like to head down?
Yes.
Let's change it. Let's make it an enjoyable path. Let's just shift it. And now I've learning more and more that, or it's becoming more clear that what I was doing was then choosing more of what I would love, which created a lot less stress and a lot less struggle. And then it sent me inward. My focus then became inward, and then what I would. So then my music changed, how I played, and then my intention around the music changed. I didn't care. I didn't care.
Yeah, right.
If no one ever heard it. And then it was a matter of for me now, like I'm loving what I'm doing so much that I don't care, but I'd love to share it with you. It's like, oh man, listen to this song. I really love this song. I reckon you might like it too. It's a very different focus.
Yeah, it's an interesting one on that. And particularly when you talked about the universe and that, people say, hey, I'm just going to trust the universe and all the signs will start to appear. And then, then I follow them and lead them. And I know you and I have had some dialogue about this outside of this podcast. And there's a view that where we are today is due to the thoughts we've had in the past type of thing. So we've landed here today now. As to whether that was trusting the universe or that was, hey, here's what I'm passionate about. This is what I really love. And this is what I want to do. And therefore, based on what I want to do, here is where I want to get to. To a degree, yeah. And I'm with you on the fact that, yes, if we are in tune, it's not about trusting the universe. It's actually about channeling that universal message and then saying, well, here I am now, and where do I want to go? And what's my thought pattern that's actually going to get me to where I want to go? And I think for me, for any man or anyone else that's listening out on there, it's you get to choose that every single day that you wake up.
Absolutely.
So if you can, and as you said, like, as you're trying to force things, how to become a superstar, a rock star, famous, how do I get the record label deals and these sorts of things, and it's living this level of force. Ultimately, there's all these chains that were still holding you back as to the rationale as to why you needed that. And we can actually choose to cut the chains on any given day. Just acknowledge where we are today and create a new thought pattern and say how we're going to move forward. Yeah. It's easy to say that, not easy to do, as you and I would know, right? It's not like it's easy to do, but it is like anything. Anyone who becomes a practitioner, like I've seen you play guitar and I've seen you sing and everything else, and the ease at which you do it didn't come overnight. It's because you've now dedicated 30, 40 years of just putting in the time and the effort and the practice and going along. And it's the same in our lives. Yes, that thought pattern doesn't change overnight, but if it's something you start to actively practice every day, it's going to start to get you down the path we want to get to. Thoughts on that space?
Well, that's absolutely right, and it's called practice. Whether it's the guitar and singing, or whether it's waking up in the morning and deciding which path am I going to take. Am I going to head down the path of? And yes, it's super easy for me to say, and it's very hard to do. But that's why we keep practicing it. And do I? I'm fully aware now. I'm 55 years old and time is flying by for me really quickly, whether it's a day or week, or I've just spent a month in Tassie. And when I got there, I'm like, geez, I'm here for a month. Suddenly it's gone. And suddenly I'm sitting here talking to you. And so I'm really aware that every day when I wake up, it's like I make that choice of, okay, today, and the day for me has a moment of sometimes like, fuck, this day is just going to go forever, you know. But I know that it's not. I know that it's going to be over in a split second, and I sometimes sit with that conscious thought of, all right, so how do I want this day to look? This is my choice right here and right now. What am I going to do? And my question to myself now, which overrides those chains and completely releases those chains for me, is, well, what would I love to do? You know, what would I love to do now? And so it's grounding in the action, you know, like, what would I love and what would I love to do? Would I love to go and sit in the backyard and read a book? Would I love to go and visit someone and sit with, I don't really feel like doing that today. Whatever it is, because I'm really aware that in that moment, it's my choice about how my day is going to be. And that's the practice. Either if I stay at this, and it's very, the sign that points towards struggle is really big, and it's a comfort zone at the same time. It's a really easy sign to follow, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, that thing of there's a resistance in me to, oh, fuck, what do I love? Who fucking cares about that? Who cares? You know, it's like, and there's that internal struggle, and then it's what I'm learning is acknowledge my thoughts and feelings, acknowledge my beliefs and assumptions, just acknowledge them, go to innocence, go to love, go to what would I love to, and then ground it in what would I love to do. And there is the that's when that whole thing of when I'm going to innocence, which is giving myself love, and when I'm going to love, then the love is coming from me. So then the question of what would I love to do, that's when, for me, that's when those signs in the universe are appearing, because they're appearing tuned into where I'm pointing my needle, my direction. How, you know, what my will is calling me to. You know, that's when things start to lighten up, and words that people say or things, and that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And thanks for sharing that. And the one thing that came to mind as you're talking through that was the difference between being in control and being in a victim status. For me, was a bit about I am who I am because of my conditions, is the victimhood type of thing. I get to create my conditions. So how my conditions look around me is more I'm in control of what I'm doing and how I actually want to move forward. And as you're saying, it's that every morning it's like, what would I love to do? And what am I going to go out to? What am I actually then actively going to do? So it's okay to wake up in the morning and say, I would love to be doing these sorts of things. I'd be love to playing guitar. Pack up and hop in the car and make your way off to, somewhere else. So as in you hop in the car and drive off and you didn't pick the guitar up. It's like, if that's what you love to do, create the time. And time's an amazing aspect. I've been doing, looking into things, and there's a view of like the Newtonian time, which is, time is the same for everybody all the time. It's 1 second, it's 60 seconds, it's 60 minutes, it's 1 hour, it's 24 hours. Like, that's just fixed. But the Einstein, which means that people feel that they don't get to control time because it's actually something that's external to them. Whereas if you took the Einstein view of the world, which is around relativity, time is relative. So as you said, you went to Tasmania. If you went to Tasmania for 4 weeks and were digging in the mines, which is something you never really wanted to do and you had no interest in it, that'd be the longest 4 weeks of your life.
That's right.
You go 4 weeks to Tasmania in a beautiful location and you're on holiday, and next thing you know, you're back home having a conversation on a podcast, because it's all relative to the joy and the happiness and how we're actually seeing things. So I think for anyone who goes, I don't have enough time for my passion. I used to be a musician. I don't have enough time to bring that back in my life because, I've now got my 9-to-5 job and my career and my wife and my kids. It's like, no. You're just choosing not to create the time, and you're actually not seeing that where's the boundary you can set, and how can you actually bring that joy back into your life, which makes you a much more joyful parent, a much more joyful, partner and everything else that goes around with it.
Absolutely. And it also, I think it makes you more joyful, all those things, but it makes and it makes me, when we're in that state, when we're vibrating like that, probably piss a lot of people off, a lot of men in particular, because it is difficult to break out of that struggle, and it's the repetition, it's the practice, it's the continuing just to try it, just to sit with every moment. Like when I sit, well, what am I going for breakfast? What am I going for lunch? What am I going for dinner? What am I going to eat? How many coffees am I going to have? What about that drink? Just being conscious of the food I'm eating, the way I'm spending my time, because those things are all affecting. So and that's what I've found. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges with gathering men is that which is what Brett Allenport and I do and how we met, is that when we bring that vibration of yeah, mate, I'm fucking loving life. I'm doing this and this. Well, it actually pushes, it repels, and that's the challenge. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, yep, just go and do this, but there's probably some guy who's just flicked off the podcast 5 minutes ago because that's what I said. He's like, nah, I'm out of here.
That's right.
That's our challenge with the work that we do is to how do I, and how do I get more men to come to a gathering? But then that's really me in a rescue mode. That's what I've also recognized too. So I'm not interested in it anymore. Now it's just like, now my focus is on just on creating a really great event, something that I would love to do, something that I'd love to be part of, and just seeing a whole lot of men there, and then talking about it and telling people about it, without the energy and the vibration of man, you should be there, and me pointing the finger. It's just like, yeah, I'm doing this and I love it, and you are most welcome to come along, and hope that men will, because it's about with men, hope that men will find that yes, because it's it's about how do I just get under that armor of a just penetrate the cracks between the armor to get in to then take the armor off of another man, and just for him to say, yeah, look, yep, I see that, and I think that would, I'd like to come along.
Yeah, the one thing I hear a lot of men saying, and a lot of women, to be honest, but a lot of men saying, I wish I could do that. So we recently, as you said, you helped me celebrate last year my birthday. We're now living down in a coastal town, and that's where we went surfing together. People go, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. It's like, my first question is, why not? Oh, well, my kids have to go to this certain school, and my kids have to do this, and I have to do this, and I've got this job. And and we rattle off all of these reasons, none of which are actually true. All of them which are just a level of excuse that we're creating to live in what our ego wants us to do. And you alluded to it earlier. Our ego wants us to be miserable. Our ego wants us to live in this mundane, lockdown, super safe, never taking a chance in life world, because that's what our parents told us we had to do. And that's what society says we have to do. Heaven forbid, you just pack up and go and do something. Education is education. I still chuckle, having worked in the corporate arena for 30 odd years, about this. To apply, you need to have a degree, which is really funny, because I've never, ever interviewed anyone, said, by the way, can you show me a copy of your degree, or even asked them what their degree was about, right? But it's on every application. And so this thing we get so caught in about, how educated people have to be, and, I have to go to the best schools to get the best leg up in life. Well, not everyone needs to be a lawyer and a doctor and a corporate person and and these high-end roles. We can just be people of service and musicians and artists and everything we want to be, without all these certifications and everything else. It's just question all the rationale. All that's all I'd say. Question why you think these things are so important to you, and are they really that important?
Yeah, well, that's right. And I mean, unfortunately, it's a bit like me wanting to be the rock star. We seem to base our life success on not everyone, I don't, but some people do, on the sort of job we have, how much money we're earning, the sort where we live, where our kids go to school, all that sort of stuff. And that's that really, I think that creates. Well, I don't know because it hasn't for me, but I see that when that path creates disharmony, because eventually people realise that. I heard this great interview. It was a musician, a Melbourne musician, and it was on Triple R, and I was listening to him. And he was a musician, very successful musician. I didn't know who it was. He didn't say who it was, and then he just talked about how he they had their first band and they got some songs. They got a record label, and then basically in a few moments he just explained how they went from a local Melbourne band to the top of the charts in America, and it was Chris Chaney from The Living End, and then he said this most amazing thing. He said, and you know what? He said, at no stage, at not one stage of our success did we stop and have any were we self-fulfilled with with the success we've had. It was astounding to hear it, and of course I know it because that's not where it comes from. We're looking for that. We're looking for things. We're looking for love externally, and we're looking at it through earning more money. We're going to find more love, and get more degrees, get more status, get more success, find more love. Well, guess what? Love's not in those things.
It's absolutely spot on. Yes, and it's that often it still comes back to get that love I never had when I was growing up. So there's two aspects of love. There's like the love I'm seeking from a partnership and a relationship moving forward, but it's still the residual was I'm trying to do all these things because at some point, and you alluded to it earlier about your parents, at some point they'll say, oh my God, I can't believe you got your record out there. That was the one thing that made me go from conditional love to unconditional love. Thank God for that. Now you've ticked the box, right?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And I would have kept looking for it. And you're right. It is that love. And I know as a parent, I know as a father that I didn't know how to give that love. I gave it, and I love my father's passed now. My mum's still alive, and I love my parents, and I know that they of course. I mean, Stephen, there's no question that you and I, the most important things on the planet and the things we love the most are our children. There's no question about that. But it's still something that as a parent, even though my child is the thing that I love the most on this planet, I haven't passed that on to them fully. Like what the hell's happened that we haven't that I haven't been able to do that, and of course I think that I have, because my dad was he was a great, his love language were very different. He didn't know how to speak it. He didn't know how to. He couldn't tell you the words, but he certainly showed you that he did in all of his actions. And how he was and how he was with us. He was a very affectionate man, and so it was all there. He was doing his best, and he was loving us as he thought he could, and he just would have presumed. I mean, there's no question of how much I love my children, but that doesn't mean they're not receiving it.
I absolutely agree, and that's a journey I've been on. Like my parents were slightly different, just completely unemotional. Every emotion was shut down in you. You couldn't be loud, you couldn't be angry, you couldn't be sad, you couldn't be overly joyous. Like it was just, how do we have almost this, as Billy Connolly calls it, how do we just be beige? Let's have a beige lifestyle where everything is just, contained, not too high, not too low, not too left, not too right. And and so yes, that has taken me a long, long time to come out and just be able to be comfortable to give my kids a hug and say I love you all the time when we're on the phone and everything else. And I think the one thing I realize, and I'm realizing, and still working through that, is that for every aspect where I do not unconditionally love myself, I cannot unconditionally love others around me. So that's something I'm working on is right. Where am I blocked in handing out this, even though my kids know I love them, but where's that barrier to that and my partner and, the men in the community and the people that I work with? wherever there's a block, that actually block is where I am not loving something about myself, and how do I actually work on me? And that's my signals to me. Okay, here's where I've now got to go and do the work so I can learn to remove that condition on who I am. And if I remove that condition, then it doesn't sit between me and the next person that I want to be able to have that love relationship with.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's right. And so, and what I've learned, what I'm learning is that I can give myself love. And when I do that, when I go to my innocence and when I give myself love, which has been, so my practice for the last almost 18 months or a bit over a year is working with Darren, and he's learned a practice where that's the premise, the whole basis of it is to give myself love and then move from there. Because once I've given myself love, I'm no longer looking for it anywhere else. Because until I give myself love, I'm only looking for it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And what follows love is joy and happiness and peace. So it's all the things where we can't find that internally, it absolutely comes back to that constantly being willing to crack those little walls that we build around our heart, that where the true love actually does come from. Definitely.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's not as I've learned, as Darren has taught me, that it's this whole thing of going to love and then what would I love? It's strategic and it's tactical. So there are days I'll go to work. I'll be sitting in my office at work and I'll sit there, and as soon as I feel that I've got the strong emotions there, or I'm shitty, or I'm feeling a bit depressed, because these feelings haven't gone away. They're still there, but it's what I do with them. When I'm feeling those things, I'll then stop myself and I'll then stand back almost from myself and go, okay, I'm shitty. Okay, I'm depressed. Okay, I'm angry. All right, so what am I going to do with that? All right, so then I'll go through that process of just acknowledge my thoughts and feelings, go to innocence, that innocent boy, that's an innocent child that's in every one of us, go back to that, which is basically giving myself love, go to my heart, and then I feel my whole body just relax, and then and be filled with love and joy, as you say, and then I then ask myself the question, okay, what would I love to do next? And then within moments, I've been sitting at my desk and I bounce off my seat like, oh, okay, I'm going to go and pick up that guitar and play that song, or I'm going to call that guy. I'm so excited. And what happens is that tension that's in my body, the tension that's in my body with the whatever I'm feeling, those strong emotions, it disappears because the tension's resolved in moving towards what I would love. And suddenly I'm like, I'm a different person. And I'm just like, wow, okay, let's go. All right, let's do this. Okay. And I'm just fully motivated and excited and inspired.
I love that. And that's why we keep going back to the word practice, right? There's a daily practice that's in that. And it doesn't mean, it's a difference between a daily practice and a daily routine. Routine can be, I'm just going through the motions. Like I got up and I did my minute and I did this and I did this. I had my breakfast and I ate healthy. But the practice is, as you said, it's that emotion comes up. And I think the key difference in people was that sometimes they go, the emotion came up. What I did was I found a distractor for it. So if I was angry, I did some online shopping. If I was angry, I've scrolled through Instagram. If I was angry, I tried to find that external piece, which is actually a distractor patterning as opposed to a practice, which is, okay, as you just said, and I love that. I'm feeling really agitated and angry. I'm just going to observe what's happening with me here. Why is that going on? And allowing it to be there. And then, as you said, just going, what do I need to do for myself at this point in time to be able to acknowledge that's okay and it's all good, and then convert that, because it's that still view that, emotion is energy in motion. So it's how you actually grab that energy, which is coming up as anger or frustration, and how do we actually, and I love that you talked about the alchemist, because alchemy is all about how do I turn lead into gold. It's like, how do I turn the energy that I'm feeling through anger or frustration into that of love? Like that's the true alchemy of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what it is, and that's what's going on and that moment. And it's really I could have before I started working with Darren, I would be walking around the house, especially coming out of lockdown. That's how Jackie started working with him first, but that's how we started working with him, because I was walking around the house, just walking from room to room, like aimless, as a lot of people were at that time. It was hard not to be. But then I didn't have a mechanism for just acknowledging it and shifting it. Because that's what it is. It's stopping. I mean, it's also, I guess it's, like I said, as we have been saying, it comes back to the practice of just trying it and observing what's going on in me, stepping back. And sometimes I've been practicing that for a long time, and it comes really naturally to me. It's as natural for me as singing and writing a song is tuning into my intuition and my instinct. That's something that I know that I just have really strong in me. Not everyone has that. So if you don't, and I know that when I was in my early 30s, the reason I went to start to do the men's work, because my intuition told me that I wanted to seek out men that I found. I was already surrounded by men of quality, but there was something I wanted to seek out more in men. I really wanted to find out that men of quality and emotion, and which is what I've done, and now I've created an environment where men can do that. And so yes, it's about the practice, but it's also about good practice, because there's also bad practice. There's like or practice that's going to work, practice that's not going to work, and that's where, for anyone who's like listening to this and thinking, well, that's all well and good, what do I just go and sit and work out how to do this? Well, yes, you try that, and also you seek out places where networks. I mean, if they're already listening to you, Stephen, then they're already doing that. But then you seek out, and it's very hard for a man to go and spend 4 days in the bush sitting around a fire and not be honest with himself.
I can testify to that.
and not stop and say, what's working for me and what's not. And that's the beginning of the practice. For some men, the practice is actually just whatever, find your thing and keep doing it. Like if it is a gathering men event, you keep coming. You keep coming to come every year. Some men there's been men who came every year for like 5 years, every event. And then what happens is that sort of leverages to a point where they go, okay, yep, I've got it now. I don't really need to do an event because I've got this now. I've got it. My life is not perfect, but I have a handle on taking responsibility for my decisions and the directions that I'm taking each day.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the one thing, the great thing about the 3 or 4 day events that Andrew and Brett run, yes, there is plenty of time where you are just with yourself and you can't hide. Like when you're out in the bush, you cannot hide from yourself and what's coming up. There's some excellent tools that the men give you to be able to walk away with. So when we talk about a practice, you actually get to use them during the event, and then there's things you can get to take away. And one of the things that happened for me is that I had gone in, I think November 21, and then I went back in March 22. And the key thing that came up with me between the two different events, and people have now noticed on the podcast, I'm now introducing as, hey, it's Stephen here. It's no longer, hey, Milvo here. Welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast. Because my coming out was the nickname Milvo, as much as I like it, and it's an affectionate name, and I still love people calling me that. It was also another mask that I was actually sitting in behind. I hadn't come out into the fullness about who I was. And I talk about a little bit of that in the introduction to this season. And so that's what happens at these events. It's just you allow Andrew and Brett, allow people to just, I suppose to a degree, that they've created that beautiful safe container and enable you to go through the process of allowing the layers to slowly strip off. And, it took me a couple of events, and we're talking about, the ones that are coming up, which we'll talk about when we look to close out. But, it's that same thing of just going to the events. It's, I think you leave an event and go, that was great, I don't need to come back. And then another event comes along and goes, actually, I think I probably need to go back. Another 4 days of solitude in the bush is probably going to be really handy for me.
That's right. Well, that's right. And, that whole thing of, like, if I was a man listening to what you just said and I'd never been to any of these events, I might think, I would imagine a man sitting, or a man or a woman, because there's a gathering of women as well, a person sitting there thinking, well, that sounds terrifying, sitting there for 4 days and having the time to really see what's going on for me. And yes, and it might be terrifying, but once we get through those layers, and for a lot of people it's not terrifying, even if it is working through that terror, then there's only love there.
Yes,
somewhere. For the majority of the men that come along, at the end of it, they go, "Hey, I'm actually a really nice guy. I'm a really good man, or I'm a loving father. I'm a loving husband. I love what I do." Or they reignite their love for what they do. It's whatever it is. So I'm kind of speaking to that person who's listening right now, who's shitting themselves because what we're talking about, and they're thinking, well, as I did. I mean, excuse my language on this, but as I did, I also did that. I shit myself, and then I realised I had to go. So the two realizations, the first men's thing I went to that process of like, oh, I'm terrified, but I know I have to go.
Yeah,
I know I'm called to this, and I said yes to it. And saying the big yes, saying yes to it, is that they're those life changing stand up moments, and there's so much gold. Like there are some men now that will come to those 4 days because that's how they press the pause button on everything that's going on. They're not even there really they're kind of, yes, they're there to explore, and yes, they're to refocus, sharpen their lens, all those sort of things, and also just to press pause on everything else, because it's very hard to refocus and sharpen my lens when I'm busy, busy all day, every day. And I'm not happy,
There's nothing more liberating than turning up to the event where these guys hold it and actually just throwing your phone into the glove box and knowing that you're not going to see it for 4 days. It's amazing feeling. For some people, that's the terrifying piece, because that's what they hold on to. The other thing I would say to any men who are listening to the podcast, or want to show interest in the Gathering Man or any other men's programs or workshops, the choice you have is to turn up and actually just leave and go, well, that was crap, and walk out the door and go back to your old life. Just don't change. You might have spent $200, $500, $800, or whatever you might have gone to spend to come and do these sorts of things. The worst case is that you walk away with the life that you've currently got. Now, whether you like that or not, it's up to you, but you don't go backwards. That's the key thing about it. You cannot go backwards by going to one of these sorts of things. You actually just make a choice going, back to my disc golf, and just maintain seeking happiness externally to me and blaming everybody else for my life, because that's much more comfortable for me. Cool. Go and do that. The upside is that it's highly unlikely that's going to happen. And somewhere along you're going to have one of those fucking aha moments. You go, fuck. And you walk out with a snippet, like a small crack opens. And that's all it has to be, a small crack. And then you go, cool. Maybe there is a different journey to this. Maybe I will actually find another podcast that men are talking about stuff, or maybe I will just go to this other slightly different workshop, or maybe I will investigate sound healing or Qigong or yoga, or maybe there must be something else to some of these more ancient practices that maybe I have been missing that could bring a little bit into my life. And then you just start a small practice, and then another small practice, and another small practice, and then you start to evolve. I mean, that's how I started.
Yeah.
That's how Andrew started. That's how most of the men who come on this podcast just went through it. There was someone in their life said, look, just give it a crack.
That's right.
You're going to be alive. It's okay. And every time I've gone, by the way, for those that's, I think that in Australia, that every time you go bush, you're either going to be chased by crocodiles, snakes, or sharks. That I would never seen a snake at this beautiful property ever. The elders of the land, past, present, and emerging, have constantly looked after us weather-wise and in relation to, what's on the land and what's around us and everything else. So, it's just it's a beautiful, amazing experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Give it a crack's a good line, actually, because when you give it a crack, that's where the light gets in.
That's right.
And it's a friend of mine said it's a guy, Craig, who came to one of these gatherings. He's a local mate of mine, and he said it's about just shifting the Titanic just a few inches. Makes a big difference. Yeah. And I would say, I mean, we don't do this, but if some guy turned up and I would offer 100% money back guarantee if at the end of it he didn't have some sort of shift, if there wasn't some sort of change, if there wasn't some sort of little shift in a few inches, which the amount of times that someone, whether it's on a gathering or even just whatever, a close friend says to me, I've got to chat about something. It's just something small. It's never small. Those we might think they're small because it's something that I don't really want to share. It's just, I think it's a little thing, but it's actually the thing. It's massive, and it's the thing that potentially is the thing that needs to be talked to about and shifted. And the only way that we can shift these things, whether they're small or large, is to talk about them, and I mean, as you said earlier, whether it's Gathering Men or whether it's Unearthed Man, whether it's whatever it is, find some way, whoever's listening, find some way to find a place where you can share those things safely, and do it without booze, and if you can, do it in the bush, because around a fire, because it becomes more and more comfortable, and acknowledge the land you're on, do all that sort of stuff. So then it deepens the whole experience, and that's when the transformation and the change can happen. But it has to begin with having the strength to say yes, and having the strength and the courage to express what's going on for me.
Beautiful. I love that. Normally I would close out with, hey, Andrew, have you got any wisdom that you'd like to share with the men? But I think that I'm not going to actually go down another path unless you've got another cracking piece of wisdom, because I think what you spoke about then was so perfect and so spot on. The only thing I would add is, man, that whisper, that little voice in your head, that thing that goes, there's something not quite right, that is just the tip of the iceberg, but you'll have to listen to it, because that's what the Titanic ran into, right?
Yes.
You've got to be aware of what's sitting underneath. It's what's underneath that is actually you have to work through and be aware of, because that's what can create the challenges that you may have later on in life. So listen to the tip of the iceberg.
And there is something else I will add to that. That's right. So important, because if I don't talk to it, then it's still sitting there. It's not until I talk to it, and that's when I find out if it's real or not. That's when I find out if it resonates. When I actually hear the words out of my mouth, often just saying those words, it releases it, and whatever was sitting there is gone. And I've felt and said things. Then I've sat and gone, you know what? That doesn't even feel like it's mine, and it's just gone. But it's not gone until I've put something, said something, and then there's the other side of it. Yes, it's the beginning of a bigger story that needs to be told. So it can be both, and we don't know until it's said, because we also hear what we are saying. I hear what I am saying, and it's very hard to do it on my own. It's much more powerful with at least one other person there.
Absolutely agree. And I think, I know we're sort of like to wrap it up there's been dialogue recently I've had with others about the Are You Okay Day, and and it's a bit of a thing about I put out something recently that was just if a man tells you he's okay, he's lying. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
And so there's this exactly into that, which is around find someone when they go, how you going? You go, look, there's a few things going on. If they're come, we'll just go down to the pub and let's have a drink. You'll be right. We'll get over it. That's not the guy you want to have a chat to. No. And if you want to find that person, then there's plenty of connections through this podcast. There's plenty of people who can reach out. Andrew, I'll have his details in there. Myself, there are plenty of people who will just get on the phone with you and go, how are you really going? No, seriously, how are you going? And we'll be willing to listen. And that's what happens at Gathering Man. And that's what happens in all of the men's workshops. They're not the woo-woo workshops and not all this sort of spiritual stuff. He's just being heard and seen as a man. Yeah. And it's something that we all crave, but we choose to hide it away from ourselves. So, I can't reiterate any more than find that people or that man that you can actually have that deep conversation with.
And, that guy that says, yeah, mate, let's go down the pub. What I've done recently with that sort of thing is, because that tells me something that maybe that guy needs this more than me. So my response is, oh, no, let's have breakfast. It's very different.
Yeah, and as long as they're not ordering a Bloody Mary with their breakfast, then there's a definite conversation to be had.
Exactly.
That's for
That's
sure.
Right. Yeah.
All right. You've been very generous with your time, Andrew. Thank you very much. And I'm not sure what time your gig will be on today, but I'll let you make sure you get enough food and drink to go and enjoy that. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, you're a man that's entered into my life, and I just have much love for you, much deep respect for you, and I feel a great connection with you. And so, pretty much after the first gathering, I'd like to you, and I know Brett's coming on later on, and say, hey guys, I've got this podcast. I'd love you guys to come on, and so you said yes, and that was awesome. So it's great to have you on. Wish you all the best with loving learning. The new music business. I love that slight change. That's awesome. And also with the Gathering Man work that you're actually doing, it's just really amazing. So Andrew, again, much love and care to you, and thanks for coming on and having a chat with us today.
Thank you, Stephen, and lots of love to you too. And well done, and thank you for all that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. All right, we'll chat soon, mate.
Okay. Cheers, mate.
Bye. So that's going to give us a bit of a wrap on episode 55. As I said last week, it's so great to be back in the host chair and just having these wonderful conversations with these beautiful men again. It's we spoke into what brings joy, and I've realised in the last 14 months what brings me joy is this conversation I get to have every week with a man who just drops some beautiful wisdom, and we just get to really connect and to a degree it's sometimes it can be a therapeutic session for both of us in having that conversation, because we get to talk about some things. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. Andrew's an amazing man, as you've heard. He's just beautiful, soft, caring. So yeah, if you get an opportunity to go and catch up with him and Brett on the Gathering Man stuff, that'd be great. Or even if you're a musician, come and check him out. I'm sure he'd take you on board. And if you said, hey, can we just jam together? I'm sure he'd jump on board and say absolutely anytime. So as you know, you can find me across all social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up for Stephen Milverton. If you are keen to learn more about the upcoming 8-week men's empowerment program, just reach out. The link will below to put you on the wait list. We'll then reach out, give you a call and have a bit of a chat about where you're at and what we can do or what I can do to help you out. So that's it. Closing up episode 55 of the Unearthed Man Podcast. Sending you much love, care and peace.